You may have known that the state of the U.S. economy is a significant driver of results in every election. But going into the 2024 campaign cycle, there are more questions than complex answers about what it means for President Joe Biden's re-election chances. Recently, the U.S. economy has shown robust performance, with inflation decreased significantly from 7.4% in 2021 to 3.4% in 2023. These positive trends should have boosted America's confidence in the economy, but surprisingly, most Americans still have a negative view of the economy. What brought this disconnect between the real data and people's perceptions? Join us as we explore the question, why do Americans think the economy is doing badly? The state of the U.S. current economic situation. The U.S. economy is in good health on the whole, according to national indicators watched closely by economists and business reporters. The economy grew at a robust 3.2% annual pace from October through December, propelled by healthy consumer spending. Again, the Commerce Department reported a slight downgrade from its initial estimate. For example, unemployment is low, and the most recent jobs report from the Bureau of Labor Statistics shows it added 216,000 jobs in December 2023, beating forecasts and stronger than expected hiring at the end of 2023. Toward the end of 2023, inflation was down substantially from highs reached during the latter half of 2022, according to data from the Center for Inflation Research at the Federal Reserve Bank of Cleveland. Gross domestic product from the third quarter of 2023, the most recent available, is in line with or better than most GDP readings over the last 40 years. GDP, gross domestic product expansion, is the economy's total output of goods and services, which measures the market's value of a country's final goods and services within a year. And the nation's GDP slipped from a red-hot 4.9% from July through September. The fourth quarter GDP numbers were revised down from the 3.3% pace Commerce initially reported last month. However, the U.S. growth has topped 2% for 6 straight quarters, defying fears that high interest rates would tip the world's largest economy into a recession. Far from stumbling, the economy grew 2.5% for all of 2023, topping the 1.9% growth in 2022. The average price of a gallon of regular unleaded gasoline is nearly $3 nationally, down more than 70 cents since August 2023, even though attacks on Red Sea shipping lanes have recently driven up oil prices. Also, consumer spending, which accounts for about 70% of U.S. economic activity, grew at a 3% annual pace from October through December. Spending by state and local governments rose at a 5.4% annual rate from October through December, the fastest pace since 2019. Growing exports also contributed to fourth quarter growth. Despite these positive indicators, news reports and opinion polls show many Americans are pessimistic about the economy, including swing states that loom large in the 2024 presidential election. Some recent polls indicate the economy is the most important issue heading into the election. 1/3 of voters rate the economy generally, or inflation and cost of living specifically, as the most important problem facing the country today, according to a December 2023 poll of 1,016 registered voters conducted by the New York Times and Siena College. Americans complain U.S. highest inflation rates. According to the latest data from the U.S. Census Bureau, even though the economy is growing and wages are increasing, many Americans are finding it challenging to keep up with their household bills. The number of consumers who reported that they found it very challenging to pay their bills during the last week has risen from 26.9 million in October 2021 to 43.2 million in October 2023. Despite having jobs and receiving raises, Americans struggle to keep up with the rising cost of living. Furthermore, the United States has recently faced the highest inflation rate in 4 decades. As a result, there's been a notable shift in how consumers perceive their personal finances. According to a survey conducted by Gallup, 50% of respondents felt that their financial situation was worse than it was a year ago, which is the highest percentage since 2009. Despite some data indicating improvements in the wage of lower-income workers, Gallup found that 61% of respondents who earn no more than $40,000 annually felt that their financial situation had deteriorated over the last year. This percentage is the highest among all income groups. Among those who make at least $100,000 annually, 43% said they were experiencing financial difficulties. Similarly, based on NBC News, there are indicators that some individuals who earn 6 figures or more still struggle to secure their finances. Despite the prevailing negative sentiment, economists have observed that the financial condition of the U.S. consumer is still robust. One of the reasons for this is the unemployment rate, which is currently at 3.4%, lower than pre-pandemic levels. Inflation has also started to slow down, and as a result, the amount of disposable income in the economy has been increasing steadily. This has led to a rise in aggregate savings as well. As a result of the sustained demand, the job market has shown a positive trend with the addition of 517,000 jobs in January, the highest since July. Even though gross domestic product growth has likely peaked in the post-pandemic period with a 2.9% growth in the most recent quarter, it remains firmly in the positive territory. Beliefs that economic success is limited. According to many Americans, the economy has performed poorly and tends to have a zero-sum outlook on life. This means that they believe that wealth can only be acquired by taking it away from others and that economic transactions benefit one party at the expense of others. This view also leads them to believe that their interests are incompatible with those of others and that their group and country will lose when other people, groups, and countries succeed. Such zero-sum beliefs have been linked to a range of negative consequences, including racism, sexism, xenophobia, and a lower sense of life satisfaction. Americans have many different opinions about how resources are distributed, known as zero-sum beliefs. This kind of thinking can help understand the distribution of resources, but it can also be incorrect regarding economic transactions. Americans may think this way because they feel threatened or compare themselves to those who are better off. Whether Americans have these beliefs also depends on how their country evaluates them based on their performance. However, whether Americans have zero-sum beliefs or not depend on specific factors. For example, it depends on how they see the economy, whether they feel threatened, and how their employer evaluates their performance. While Americans may generally view success as zero-sum, this belief can be influenced by the environment around them. Economic inequality perception. Economic inequality is a growing concern among many Americans who believe that resources are unequal. This issue has been on the rise for several decades globally and has reached its peak in the United States since the Great Depression. Unfortunately, this inequality is linked to several adverse consequences, including risky decision-making, low social connections, and civic participation, as well as high mortality rates, substance abuse, and debt. It's worth noting that misperceptions of inequality are quite common, but the effects of perceived economic inequality can be just as significant as the actual level of inequality. For example, subjective inequality is associated with lower life satisfaction, skepticism about meritocracy, and a general sense of cynicism towards society. Although inequality is not necessarily dependent in America, the resource distribution is a zero-sum game. According to game theory, zero-sum situations result in gains and losses that cancel each other out. However, while such situations can create inequality by benefiting some at the expense of others, inequality itself is not always a zero-sum game. Positive-sum situations, where multiple parties can benefit by expanding the resources available, and negative-sum situations, where various parties can lose, can result in different rates of improvement or deterioration, leading to non-zero-sum inequality. However, economic inequality doesn't necessarily have to be a zero-sum game. Americans tend to perceive it as such. Unfortunately, many Americans have a distorted perception of basic economic principles, and their beliefs often diverge from reality. This is especially true regarding inequality, where ideology and cognitive processes can distort perceptions of financial gaps in society. Even though zero-sum beliefs don't always do the reality, they can still significantly impact life satisfaction and interpersonal trust, just like inequality does. Therefore, it's crucial to understand the effect of perceived inequality on zero-sum beliefs. As perceptions of inequality increase, some Americans view success as a zero-sum game, where one can only get richer at the expense of others. Perceptions of competition by societal norms and expectations. Economic inequality can lead to the development of zero-sum beliefs, resulting from the perception of competitiveness. When economic disparities increase, some Americans may consider the social climate more competitive, leading to the belief that success can only be achieved at the cost of others. Such inequalities often promote a normative view of competition, and those living in highly unequal areas tend to see their neighbors as more competitive. Additionally, economic inequality tends to increase the importance of power, dominance, and independence, thereby shaping Americans' perceptions of the overall climate. As a result, people may view economic success as limited while trying to comprehend the increasing economic inequality, leading to the perception of a competitive and individualistic normative climate. The idea of zero-sum beliefs about success is prevalent among Americans, possibly due to various reasons. Firstly, when Americans feel threatened by seeing others' success as a loss to themselves. Competitive environments can trigger this kind of perception, and this is why some Americans may believe that success only comes at the expense of others. Secondly, when people compete, they tend to compare themselves to others who are better off, which can further increase zero-sum beliefs. Lastly, competitive leaders who shape their followers' views may contributing to developing zero-sum beliefs. In this case, the normative climate's depicted as competitive, leading many Americans to believe that economic success is limited. This belief is linked to economic inequality, where people perceive their success as determined by the success of others. Although the American economy is thriving, there are significant differences in how much economic power citizens have. This creates a sense of injustice, where people may not receive what they deserve and vice versa. This unequal distribution of wealth can make American society seem weak and break down beliefs in social mobility. It can also lead people to attribute economic outcomes to external factors beyond their control. Thanks for watching. Do you think Americans expect too much from the country's economic growth? Share your thoughts in the comment section. Also, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next one.